Hey, and welcome back to Game Talk. I'm your host, Sam, and me on today I'm joined by Connor
Hey guys.
and Mike.
Hello.
And thank you, Connor, for hosting last week. Last week was the first ever episode. I was not there, so historic moment for this show.
Wow.
Or whatever.
I didn't even realize that, yeah.
But yeah, today I think you had a pretty good topic, Connor. We want to talk about competitive versus non-competitive games and sort of frame that within the newest season of Fortnite, and I'll just sort of hand it over to you from here.
Yeah, so I don't actually know when the new season started, but I played it for the first time the other day. And they're doing like a Fallout Mad Max kind of mashup thing. And so it's really, really vehicle heavy right now, which I think is really fun.
Mad Max is like all vehicles. So.
Yeah. So
Like,
so right
that's
now,
literally the whole movie.
yeah, right now, if there's like a handful of bosses you can beat, or different ways to get like these supercars around the map, and like that's been my win condition. Like me and my buddy Tyler have been playing, and we get wins very easily if we can get one of those cars. And if we can't get one of those cars, we're not gonna win. Basically, if somebody else has it and you don't, you've already lost for the most part. Maybe if you're really high skill and the person driving is not very good, then it's different. But a lot of people are really mad about this. Ninja specifically had a rant go viral about how stupid the new meta was and basically he can't win right now.
Right.
And I think he's just being a crybaby. Like it's really fun. The new like this is my favorite season of Fortnite in a while. It's really fun. And if you need to win to have fun playing Fortnite, there's like you're sick in the head. Like,
well, I mean, Fortnite does have a competitive aspect to it.
No, not really. Like, it's never been balanced in any meaningful way.
But they have like tournaments and stuff, right?
Yeah, but they're for fun. It's not a balanced competitive game. Like, this isn't Valorant. This isn't Counter-Strike. Like,
yeah, like Fortnite's update cycle doesn't let it stay balanced for long. And same with a game like Apex.
It gets updated so often, and like there's so many game-breaking things added each time.
Right.
Like a balance for Fortnite is almost out of the question.
No, it's just not that kind of game. Which
kind of begs the question of like how is there a competitive scene? Because I know there is one.
There's not a. I mean, like there's a ranked game mode, and there are people that care about it, but it's not. It's clearly not like the point. And also, like, it would be a waste of development time for them to care about that scene literally at all. It's a fraction of a % of the players of this game. It would be, you would genuinely be making the game worse for, like, the vast majority of its players. And I feel that way about most games when they focus on their competitive scene, outside of games that are clearly, like, esports from
built
the start.
Around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Valorant,
Counter-Strike, Rocket League.
Right.
Any of those.
Well, even Rocket League, there's, like, there's a casual side and a competitive side to Rocket League, but I really don't feel like there is for something like Counter-Strike.
Rocket League is an esport from its conception, but it has silly game modes. It's kind of the opposite, where, like, Fortnite is a silly game from its conception that has a ranked mode. Rocket League's kind of the opposite.
And here's one of the biggest things about, like, competitive gamers and people who are, like, the high-end 1% skill tree. They have the worst balancing decisions.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, Pokemon, I feel like, is like the easiest thing to look at for this. They're always like banning new Pokemon from tournaments to preserve the current meta. Like
I remember when I played Apex, at least semi-frequently, there were always pro players who were complaining about how the wingman was broken.
Yeah.
Not realizing that it's broken because they can hit their shots.
Yeah.
It's not broken for 95% of people that play the game. It was broken for them.
Well, like both of you stated, right? It's a question of audience, and oftentimes the competitive scene is such a small subset of the overall gaming audience that it just really doesn't make sense to balance around their sort of needs.
No, but games do it sometimes, and
games.
it negatively impacts the game in a pretty meaningful way. When
Halo Infinite's the biggest one.
Yeah, no, Halo Infinite has
designed it from the ground up. Its multiplayer was designed with pro gamers in mind.
Was it really? I didn't know that.
They had a lot of them on consultation. And the thing about being good at a game does not make you good at designing a game. and making a game
Absolutely
fun.
true.
Like
Excellent point.
There's no correlation.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they would do that because Halo clearly is not that franchise. Like Halo has always been a hey, get together with your friends, sit down around your console and play together kind of game.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And granted, there were always ranked modes. Like Halo 3 had ranked, and it was very popular. Like I enjoyed Halo 3
Halo
ranked
had
back in the day.
esports, but the esports
But like Halo is a
secondary.
social game, a social casual game first and foremost, and
Yeah.
it's kind of strange that they did not take that philosophy to heart.
I mean,
with, Infinite.
I play all these games that we've talked about, and I play them to win. Like, I am very serious when I'm playing them. I want to win, but I don't think that they should be catered to an audience that cares about a meta. I just... It's insane to do that, in my opinion, except in the handful of cases where that was your intent from the very beginning. And Halo it's kind of a betrayal of, like, the idea. Like, Halo is typically reasonably balanced team-wise, but the guns are not balanced, and that's, like, part of it. You find the good gun, you get the better vehicle, you secure the tank, and you're not supposed to be balanced at that point. You're supposed to have an advantage now.
Yeah, that's definitely true for like most players. But I do think that someone like a pro at Halo could pick up a battle rifle and outgun anyone that isn't on their level. Like even if they have like rocket launchers and lasers and whatnot.
And
sure.
does that make the battle rifle overpowered? No. To the pro, it'd feel like, oh, the battle rifle's overtuned, they need to nerf it. But to the common player, it's he's just good with the battle rifle.
Yeah. Now, the other topic that kind of made me think of this was Sakurai recently released the numbers, the win rate numbers for Smash Ultimate, and apparently, like every single character's win rate is between 48 and 51%. There's no variation outside of that.
That's insane.
That's
man.
good.
Yeah, but then competitive players will sit here and talk to you about meta and everything, like. But the truth is that game's balanced. Like,
yeah.
Well, but here's the thing: like the pro scene is often just in a different world from everyone else.
I know, and
like in their hyper specific world, that yes, like at that level, some characters are basically just unusable. But again, those things shouldn't dictate like larger game design.
Exactly. That's my argument. Yeah, like Smash Bros. Shouldn't change anything, in my opinion, to cater to a competitive scene that is like. I probably could name. 100 people I know that play Smash, and I know one person that plays in tournaments, and he does it pretty casually.
Yeah.
It's
a like competitive people will come up with a meta, and they'll justify, like, Melee's meta is based entirely off tournament performance and vibes. It's all vibe-based at this point.
Well, Melee's meta... It's interesting you bring up Melee because that's the one competitive scene I'm very interested in. And it's amazing to me that meta at the highest levels is still evolving over 2 decades into it.
Yeah, it's tournament performance. Like, oh, hey, Yoshi's bad, until someone comes in and proves them that Yoshi's actually good.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, maybe Yoshi's good. It was all vibes-based.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, no one was crazy enough to actually put in the hours and into a strange character like Yoshi, except for Amsa.
Yeah.
He single-handedly proved that character can be competitive at that level.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that Smash, and a lot of players don't realize, that there's a lot of things that are competitive at every level. They just don't want to put 2 and 2 together.
I mean, I don't know
put the hours in.
I also think, and this is like an insanely hot take, but if you can't do anything outside of the meta, you're not actually good at the game. You're good at the meta.
Yeah.
There's like a famous Smash Bros. Story. There was a girl who came in and like beat somebody that was like fairly high ranked in tournament play, and she beat him by playing as Isabelle. And because nobody competitive plays Isabelle, he had no idea what to do. I don't even think he knew her moveset, is what it looked like watching the footage.
You weren't good at the game. You were just good at the meta characters.
And they bullied her out of the scene. And that's what it feels like Ninja is doing right now. Like he's not actually good at Fortnite. He's good at the meta at the time. He's good at a very rote...
I don't know if I agree with this take that you can be good at a meta but not the game. Like clearly Ninja is good at the game. Clearly these smashers are good at the game. But you can be good at the game and not know a certain matchup. Like the most recent example I can think of, actually going back to Melee, Cody Schwab, currently the best Melee player in the world, he mains Fox, which is arguably, not arguably, like almost definitively at this point the best character in Super Smash Bros. Melee. But at the most recent Super Major, he got out at a shocking like 16th or 17th place. Like he got beat very early, and they were by low tier characters like Donkey Kong and Samus. So it was just like the fact of he doesn't ever encounter these characters at a higher level. So he was not prepared to fight their specific playstyles, and like the best player in the world got out very early in this tournament.
So he's
Just an
good at the
interesting
meta.
example
Like
of
I
lack
don't know.
of
Yeah.
lack of knowledge for things outside the meta. But I mean, he's clearly still good at he's still the best player in the world. You know, you can't call him bad.
I
at
mean,
the game.
yeah, if you're good at your fundamentals, you can do really well. But if you can't, like, sometimes you just won't know what a character does.
I mean, I
or
couldn't
something
beat him,
happens.
but like obviously these people in the 17th place could beat him. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not like a common occurrence, right? Like freak things happen like that. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, you like that statement is just wrong. Like these players are still masters at their craft. They're just,
yeah,
they
but
can
their
get
craft
caught
isn't their
unawares
game.
by lack of game knowledge.
I'm arguing their craft is such a narrow part of the game that I would not call them masters of the game. They're masters of this, and they're far better than me. Like I could not pick any character and beat somebody who's this good. But when your
but to
knowledge
get
is
to that
so-
point, you have to become a master of the game, is what I'm arguing.
I guess. I just think it's insane for Ninja, the best Fortnite player in the world, to throw a tantrum because they put good cars in it. Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of always been his MO, right? He's been a little, for lack of a better word, whiny
yeah.
over the years
I mean,
when things don't go his way.
That's pretty much any pro. Like, the Apex scene has the same problem where one dude just continuously complains
I mean, it's
about
every
about meta.
Anytime the meta gets shaken up, competitive players throw a fit. Like,
They do.
it's
They always
because
always have a tantrum.
they have no ability to adapt, like, or they have no interest in adapting, at least. And
Yeah, I don't know how much I agree with this, because like I do think by virtue of them being good at the game, they can adapt. It's just that sometimes these like and it's like a case by case thing, right? Like sometimes these decisions are truly like, okay, this was an objectively bad decision for the game, and developers will backtrack and like fix it. But like in the case of this Fortnite thing, like I just think it's a case of, okay, it's just this fun new mechanic added to this game that isn't even focused on being competitive in the first place. So like, who are you really complaining to?
I mean,
don't
but
know.
most competitive scenes are, well, I guess not most. A lot of competitive scenes are for games that are not competitive in the first place, like Fortnite or Call of Duty or
that's fair.
Halo or Smash Bros.
Yeah, Smash Bros. Like the biggest example.
Yeah, Smash Bros. Is the
Like,
biggest example.
Sakurai notoriously hates all the competitive aspects of the games he makes.
I think it's funny that it exists, but on some level, I kind of hate it too. Like fighting games, if you want to play a competitive game, you have like a million games to choose from, and you're going to choose Super Smash Brothers, like the
But
party
see, but
game.
I don't know. Like to me,
Smash
though,
doesn't
like
feel competitive. It never has.
No, you have to turn off over half the game to make it competitive.
Like half the game
but like
disappears.
I think there's value in it. I mean, like
You have to
turning off the items, like items introduce a level of randomness. Well, yes, is very fun. Like in a skill-based match, it's cool to watch what two people can like do to each other in that game. How far they can push the mechanics in that game.
But in order to do that, you have to turn off all the items, most of the stages, 70 of the characters. Like,
Yeah,
you don't turn off the characters.
But nobody
I
uses
get
them.
your point.
Yeah.
You are like actively not engaging with a lot of the stuff put in the game, which to the person who created the game, Sakurai, must be very annoying. So I totally get that perspective.
Yeah.
But like as someone who has enjoyed competitive Smash from a very young age, I am glad that the scene exists. Like, and granted, like I cannot even come close to scratching any of these pros that I'm watching, but I just enjoy the technical mastery on display and just the storylines that emerge out of a competitive scene. So
Yeah, I don't think it's bad that it exists. I just think developers really should not be listening to them.
Yeah, like-
I think we can all agree on that.
Even for like
For the most part.
Counter-Strike, I would argue. I mean, there's a saying in game development. I actually heard it earlier today. I'm trying to remember the exact wording. You should always listen to your feedback, but the majority of feedback is bad, and you have to interpret it. Like the fix your players recommend is probably
Right.
going to be stupid. And you need
because
to-
as a game creator, you have a wholly unique perspective that even people who deeply understand your game, like,
can't
obviously they
possibly
might
know.
have like 70% of what they need to give actionable feedback, but they don't have the 100%, and therefore you have to take every bit of advice, every bit of feedback with a grain of salt, and sort of mold that to what you think
Tell
is
that
best.
to the Overwatch devs, because they just took the pro community feedback and said, "Oh yeah, we'll just completely break our game."
Yeah, and it's never recovered.
Overwatch is a unique case where I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like the creators of that game are totally visionless at this point. They're just trying to save a sinking ship by just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks.
What had largely happened is they listened to pro players way too often because they wanted to get their esports dream and the Overwatch League off the ground as fast as possible. And you saw how that went.
Yeah.
So, like, when a meta pulled in, the meta of Overwatch was so stale that the same meta was played for almost a year and a half, and Blizzard did not have the update cadence to keep the meta changing.
Wow.
So you were seeing the same thing for 3
understand
seasons.
Is why does Overwatch 2 exist in the first place? Who asked? Like, Overwatch 1 was great. Like, they were adding characters to the game. They were adding maps to the game.
Overwatch 1 was great at launch.
Yeah, Overwatch 1 was pretty hated by a lot of people by the end of its life.
Once
Overwatch
they hit into GOATs and the meta staled for like 3 years almost, it was kind of over for Overwatch 1.
But why does Overwatch 2 exist is a really good question, because everything I heard about it before launch sounded like it was targeting a casual audience, not the pro audience. It was adding PvE.
Yeah, there was going to be like a campaign too, and that they canceled.
Yeah, like, and they just backtracked on all of it and just released they just basically released an update that made their game worse. From what I've heard, I've never played. I've played like 3 hours of Overwatch 1 and 0 hours of Overwatch 2 because I didn't like 1 outside of the game feel. Immaculate game feel, perhaps the best I've ever played in that regard. Blizzard are masters of that. But I hate hero shooters.
Yeah, and that's a separate discussion, but I also am just so sick of hero shooters. Like, I'm okay with never seeing one again.
Yeah.
Honestly. And Valve is making one too now, so.
Yeah, Valve's could be a little more interesting because it sits somewhere between Dota and Overwatch, from what I've read.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's almost like a MOBA shooter kind of thing. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm interested to see it. But
sounds like something my cousin would be into.
I give Valve stuff a shot. I don't like Dota though, so I tend to give Valve stuff a chance.
But when you brought this topic up, Connor, the first thing that came to my mind, and granted, like, I don't really dabble in too many competitive games, if any at all, but one that comes to mind is Destiny. Because Destiny, very clearly from the outset, they were like, we're going to have a PvE mode, and we're going to have a PvP mode, and eventually they added like a PvE and PvP mashup mode. And just like following Destiny for many years, and granted I've fallen off in recent years, and to me Destiny is not what it used to be, but back in the day, right, like I've over 1,000 hours in Destiny 1, like many hundreds of hours in Destiny 2. It was always a balancing nightmare because there were all these guns, all these armors, all these abilities in this game. And there was one sort of balance profile for PvE and a totally separate balance profile for PvP for each gun, for each piece of armor. Like, that level of meticulousness must be a nightmare to maintain. Especially because there's always new guns coming out. There's always new pieces of armor coming out. There's new classes coming out, all of this. And to have... And eventually, from what I hear, it seems like they just sort of gave up on the PvP aspect just because, like, it became untenable to maintain all that game design.
I mean, that's just kind of the right answer, right? It's okay to have it, but I can't think of any MMO that has meaningfully balanced PvP.
Yeah. And I think Destiny got close, and maybe was even there a few times in its lifespan, but as a live service game does, right, it's constantly moving.
Yeah,
the meta's never staying in one place, and it's very hard to keep all parties happy with each update. So, like, eventually all the competitive stuff sort of fell to the wayside from what I understand, but for a while there, it was Bungie's ambition to have, like, this ideal PvE game and ideal PvP game, and they certainly tried. I'll say that. But it's just with a game like Destiny, like an MMO, like there's way too many, I guess, variables to really keep track of to just have that be a sustainable game design model.
Dark Souls also has a PvP side to it with this, but like you can tell that it's not a focus. Like Elden Ring has it as well.
You know what they did focus on for the PvP side?
Of Elden Ring?
Made me mad. No, oh Christ, Armored Core 6.
See, I wanted them to a little bit. I wanted that to. I didn't want it to be like the most balanced. Like, I didn't want them to spoil your fun in single player necessarily, but I really didn't like. I talked about it on the show. I really didn't like that there was one build that I saw in every single round. That I hate a meta that is that strict.
You hate seeing that in any game. Like, and if your game gets to that point, then obviously it's in need of some balance tweaks.
Yes. I mean, like, Sea of Thieves has an obvious meta, and I've weirdly had people arguing with me about this, but the Sea of Thieves meta is blunderbuss and sniper rifle. Blunderbuss is a shotgun. And yes, like, 2 players of equal skill, if one of them is using that meta, they're going to win. But I play sword pistol because I think it's funnier. And I win most of the encounters that I'm in because I got good at the game. And it's like, even though most of the people I'm fighting are using that meta, it's not so much better that it can't be, like, you can't get around it. But in Armored Core, it was genuinely that bad. Like, you would have to be insanely good at the game to get any wins against even a mediocre player using the meta.
But Armored Core has gotten updated since then. I don't know if any of us have checked it out, but I wonder if some of those issues have been alleviated. Is there still only one meta in Armored Core, Mike?
I have not touched Armored Core since I finished it.
Yeah, me neither. I keep saying I'm going to go back to it. I never finished it.
All the stories and everything, and I just haven't touched it since then.
I need to do it.
Do you, though? There's so much happening.
I like it. I just keep playing Monster Hunter, so it's not like I can say anything about new games. You know?
Right.
I played the game from 2018.
There's no PvP aspect in Monster Hunter, right?
No, there's not. And that's good, because Monster Hunter is absolutely a game that does not balance its weapons between them. Like, they're for sure... I'm pretty sure the strongest weapon in the game is Greatsword, although that is balanced by the fact that the timing windows on Greatsword are much harder than any other weapon. But, you know, at the absolute highest skill level, I don't think anything competes with Greatsword. And that's fine, because it's a PvE game. So, it really doesn't matter. The weapons are balanced, and largely it's a casual game.
Right. I do think it's interesting that, like, on this spectrum that we're talking about, the 3 of us would definitely fall under casual gamer. Like, for most things, we would not call ourselves that, but, like, on this kind of competitive PvP level, all 3 of us are absolutely casual gamers for most games we play, I think.
The only game I ever even, like, nudged into competitiveness was, Rocket League. And I was serious about Rocket League, but Rocket League is a game you can't really get competitive at without friends that want to play it with you. And I did not have that. So I had my buddy Antonio and I got really good at one point. We got into Diamond, I think, which isn't like super high, but we'd only played for like 3 weeks or something. We were getting very into it. We were learning the meta. We were watching the YouTube videos. We were using the car that has the best hitbox. We were doing all of that. But he just ran out of time, and we dropped it.
No, it's fun going down that rabbit hole of, like, I'm going to try to become competitive, but then you often realize how much actual work that is. I remember for Destiny, there was a brief time where I was like, okay, I'm going to really try. Because I think I've told this story on the podcast before. There was this rare, like, hand cannon gun that you got by climbing the ranks in competitive. And me and my friends, my like guild mates, were really trying to get this gun. And eventually, it was just like too stressful. I was like, I'm not going to devote more time to this. But some of my friends actually went ahead and got the gun. And then Bungie made that available to everyone later, completely devaluing it.
We've talked about that on the show before.
Yeah, I've mentioned that before.
Psychotic choice on Bungie's part.
Yeah, it's wild. But the other thing I think of, right, when Bungie was really trying to cater more towards the competitive aspect of things, in Destiny 1, they released a mode called Trials of Osiris, which it was like a set of, I think, 9 competitive matches, and you can only play them once a week. And if you get through all 9 and you like win majority of them or something, you get really rare items. I might be missing the exact verbiage of what happens. It's been a long time since I've played Destiny, but point is, the Trials of Osiris were Destiny's sort of foray into really creating a competitive only mode. And it was great for a while. And I remember playing Trials matches with some of my friends, and it was some of the most tense gameplay because the stakes were incredibly high. And there is value in that. But like I said, you know, like Trials did stick around like into Destiny 2, but like I said, how that ended up, like I don't think there's a really healthy competitive scene for Destiny anymore. But for a while there, I think there was. And shout outs to Trials of Osiris. That was some very stressful sort of fun, if you want to call it that.
Any game, like I hear the siren song of competitive stuff every once in a while. And look into it. Like I got into Rocket League, arguably Sea of Thieves. I think I'm like only like 0.2% of players have the curse eye unlocked in Sea of Thieves, so I'm probably one of the higher competitive players in Sea of Thieves.
Well, here's how I think about it. And I've had this discussion with my cousin before, who I said, like, I've told you guys is really, really high ranked in League.
Right, yeah.
But the way he obviously plays other games, but not nearly to the extent that like we do, right? Like
yeah.
his main game, his main like entertainment basically is League of Legends. Like when he's not working, when he's not going to the gym, he's playing or thinking about League of Legends. And that's the sort of level he has to be at to be where he is at in that game, which is just not something I'm willing to do in any circumstance. I understand the intrinsic value at getting really good at something to the point where you're like objectively, like nationally recognized. And like, obviously that's got to feel really, really good. But to me, I think I just love the variety way more. I love consuming different types of games and just spreading out my interests.
That's what I think is missing though in gaming. Like gaming has a cultural issue with this where everybody is so aware of like the best in the world, the best in the nation. Once upon a time, you could be the best kid in your neighborhood at basketball.
Yeah, being painfully aware of who's the best at a game kind of ruins the whole schoolyard. I'm the best Fortnite player at my school, or I'm the best in my friend group.
Yeah, like you can't know who the best
Right.
Fortnite player among your friends is because there's no way to match together. Like you can know who wins the most often, but you can't literally know who's going to beat who.
Yeah, like being good at games in your friend group was always like a title you coveted, I guess.
People also just don't care.
Especially like the three of us can talk about this because we grew up in an era where going over to your friend's house and playing video games was often the judge of like how good I am at this game.
Right.
Like that was the validation we got. Like, oh, I can beat all my friends, then I must be really good at this game.
Like me being among my friends the best at COD and Smash was a point of pride for a little bit.
I don't know if you guys have had any experiences like this, but I a few times have matched with people on dating apps who are the best person they've ever like they never lose at Mario Kart. They're the best person they've ever played, or the best person in their friend group, and I
fish in a pond.
I absolutely cream them like it's not even close. Like they get nervous when I select 150cc. Like
yeah, I mean, there's a kind of endearing quality to that.
No, I think that's great for them, and it's
blissfully
sad.
Unaware of the larger, sweatier world out there.
It's upsetting to me that I shattered their worldview, because when somebody says that to me, I'm excited to have a contest, because I also am like against the people I routinely play Mario Kart against. I'm pretty good. I win most of the time, not every time. I'm not that good, but which just goes to show you how small the pond they're swimming in is.
Right?
You know?
Yeah. It's but I don't know. Like that's the thing, right? You can be the best in a casual setting, and that's great. And you probably should just keep it that way and not dig any deeper. Because if you dig deeper, you'll realize how deep the ocean is, and suddenly that might impact the amount of fun you're having, which defeats the purpose of video games in the first place.
But I think
unless you specifically really want to be competitively good. And there's, like I said, there is value in that. But most people, I don't think, want to do that.
I think in video games it's weird though, because I do find it's so much easier to like see, like, I don't know, nobody's thinking about Michael Jordan when they go out well, I guess they're thinking about him, but nobody's like, God, I could never beat him when, and like upset about that when they go out and play basketball with their friends.
Yeah.
But people absolutely think about that when they play competitive games. Like speedrunning, for instance. When you get into speedrunning, you're absolutely thinking like, God, I'm never going to get the world record.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, your Michael Jordan example was pretty apt in that, like, that should just be something you kind of let go of and still
for
enjoy
sure.
the game.
Listen,
you shouldn't let that impact your enjoyment of the game.
I think speedrunning is one of those where it's like, man, I could definitely get the world record, because as someone who has done speedrunning in the past and has held a world record for a span of time,
Yeah.
once you kind of learn the game, it's just optimization to that point. Like it's not as much skill as just
That,
like once you develop those skills, it's just optimizing. It's cutting corners. It's making your turns a little faster.
But here's the thing. It goes back to the discussion of, like, that's a level of, I guess, professional, like, hardcore gaming that I'm not prepared to engage with, because, again, that's the case of I have to devote so much time to this one thing, and only this one thing if I want to get to where I need to be. And I really respect the people that are willing to make that trade-off. It's just, that's not something I could do.
It's also another note on my mastery of a type, like mastery of a meta versus mastery of a game. I had a very, very good Mario 64 16 star time at one point, sub 20 minutes, like pretty good. And there's, like, I would not be able to beat that game without dying. Like if I was going for 120 star or anything, like not even just playing it casually, like, I'm not that good at Super Mario 64. I'm good at the speedrun. I know the exact inputs I need to put in to do the speedrun.
Yeah, at that point, it just sort of becomes mechanical, which is crazy to think about for a game like Mario 64. But it's true. At that level, you're just like, oh, I hold forward for like X amount of seconds, and then I press, A, and then I do this.
Yeah, the nanosecond. There were a few tricks in that game, like the very first two tricks you have to do. The Lakitu skip, and then the one where you clip through the cage and Bob on Battlefield. I have to do that perfect, because if I make a single mistake going through that, I'm like totally thrown off, and I'll miss the clip to get into Bob on Battlefield. After that, I could do it. Mistakes were acceptable, but before that, if I did anything wrong, like, it would throw me off so much I couldn't do it at all.
It's a very zone-based activity.
Yeah.
Which I love that, right? Like, it's such a unique facet of gaming that I really don't even interact with at all. I mostly just watch, like, Summoning Assault recaps, and God, he's just the absolute best at creating stories out of these world record runs and just making it, like, thrilling to watch.
This is unrelated, but did you all see that Mario 64 was beaten with no A presses recently?
No,
by a human being.
How?
Yeah. The TAS has been able to do it for a long time, but it was a 70-star run, 86 hours, 0 A presses.
Man, I love it. It's just these games, these older games, are still giving, decades later. I mean, I recently actually watched a video, like, have you seen the Tetris video?
Yeah.
Summoning Salt's Tetris video? Yeah. Like, oh my God. I had no earthly idea the level of progression in that game and how far people have pushed it.
Yeah.
That, like, ultimate respect. And the fact that the current record holder is, like, some 13, 14-year-old kid who obviously wasn't even born
when
Tetris came out, right, is now just conquering the game at a level no one has ever seen. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. I guess this is kind of bringing us back to the original topic, but another thing game designers have to kind of straddle is not even competitive play, but high-level play versus low-level play, even in a single-player game. I've seen recently, I was rewatching Joseph Anderson's video on Dark Souls 3, just for background noise, and he had a lot of beef with how easy Dark Souls 3 was. And I was just thinking, I don't know, man, it felt pretty good to me.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a perspective you have if you're someone who's someone who's slightly above casual level.
Because Dark Souls 1 didn't have the problem, because Dark Souls 1 has so many self-balancing features that they kind of didn't have in 3. Like the ability to kindle a bonfire to make it easier. Whereas in 3, anything you do is permanent. You don't kindle your bonfire, you increase your number of Estus flasks, and that's permanent through the entire rest of the game. So you can't make one boss easier, you have to make the entire game easier. which is interesting. Like those are two different ways to approach that problem. And I think there's a strong case that the Dark Souls 1 approach is better to
No, it's fascinating. Like, actually, this is a pretty apt comparison between Souls and Destiny, where, like, it's a similar problem set where you have all these equips and such that, I mean, you have a wide variety of skills and equips, right? But in the case of the Elden Ring, Dark Souls, what have you games, those are the same, PvE to PvP.
Right.
Some like the balancing that must have taken to just ensure that works. I can't even imagine, right? Destiny didn't even attempt that, but the Souls games attempted that, and I think to a large extent it succeeded.
Did it? I was always under the impression that PvP in Dark Souls just wasn't balanced, and that was just kind of fine.
Right? Yeah. It's like there's clearly strategies that move to the forefront, but like I don't know, man. Like I think you can get good enough via any kind of build and have that be viable, quote unquote.
I don't know enough about it.
I've seen people like obviously just get online and spam like the most powerful magic spell, but like I've also seen people like wielding daggers or whatever like take those people down. So
see, I've never done competitive multiplayer in a Souls game. I do the one where you just hunt some unsuspecting guy. But I've never done the one where you're actually
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's funny.
I love how it's like slightly mean-spirited, and that makes it kind of funny as well.
If you're playing the problem is you've already signed the social contract by playing that game.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's how I feel about Sea of Thieves, too. Like, it's for sure
playing
mean.
the game, like, you're open to just getting ganked and, like, losing everything you've fought for up to this point.
It's the same in Sea of Thieves. Like, it's absolutely mean that I swoop in and take somebody's treasure that they've spent 2.5 hours collecting, but also it's called Sea of Thieves.
Gosh, I think the last time this happened, I don't even remember. I don't even think it was Elden Ring. I think it was Demon's Souls. I was playing Demon's Souls and I evaded someone, and we had a pretty lengthy fight. And, oh man, this is going to sound so bad, me saying it, but, it's coming out of my mouth, so I'm going to continue. But, like, there was a point in the battle where, like, it was obvious I was going to win, and then he just started running. And that, like, activated my prey instinct. So I just, like, chased him down like an animal and just executed him.
Absolutely.
But it was really funny that it was just like, oh, like, you've given up on this. Now I smell blood. I'm coming in kind of thing.
I do the same thing in Sea of Thieves. If somebody puts up a fight, but they're really bad, if they ask me for mercy, I'll often let them go because I don't care about the money that much. But if somebody runs, I'm a predator now.
Right, like you're a great white shark and you smell blood.
Blood in the water.
You're just going in for the kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something very unique about the Soulsborne games that I can't overstate that enough, that it's crazy that like the game works with the same equips without any balance changes throughout PvE and PvP. That's pretty impressive.
Another game that this isn't PvP and PvE, but low level to high level play. Another game that I think supports it really, really impressively, even though I don't particularly like it, is Hades.
Is there PvP in Hades?
No, there's no PvP. I'm saying the high level to low level play balance that they have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going a topic back, but Hades is definitely like, people call it baby's first roguelike and stuff, and I think that's very true because you have a level up system in Hades, and genuinely like getting a win in that game is extremely doable. I think I want to say my 10th run, something like that. Like, and I'm a roguelike veteran, so don't feel bad if it took longer than that, but it's very attainable to get a win in Hades, whereas like it took me 6 years to get a win in Spelunky 1, and I didn't even come close for most of that time. It took me 200 tries to get a win in Noita. Like,
well, both of those examples you listed were you're starting from scratch, right, each time, but the only thing you carry forward is your skills.
Right.
Whereas in Hades, you actually actively get, like, the character gets better in addition to your skills.
But once you've beat Hades a few times, it might be the first time, I don't remember, you unlock something called Heat, which takes you...
Yeah, I think it's the first time.
It takes you backwards. Suddenly the game is getting harder instead of easier. And I think that's a really smart way to kind of balance the fact that you're getting stronger in Hades.
And I do like that the Heat thing is, like, totally optional, too.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to, like, keep, like, going up the difficulty curve, you don't have to. You can still enjoy Hades for what it is, which is, like, an incredible incredible game with really good story, really good characters.
Yeah.
But for people who desire that extra edge, it's there.
It still doesn't like scratch the itch for me, I guess. I like a roguelike that it's really hard to roll the credits, and I don't, something about Heat doesn't just doesn't work for that for me. But that might be my brain. I don't know. Hades is a good game. It's just not for me.
You're just a Hades hater.
I'm just a hater.
Certified noted
Hades hater.
Unenjoyer.
You weren't here, Amit, but I went back and played it last week again. And
I wasn't there, but I certainly heard all of it.
You heard it, yeah. But I do find it interesting. I think it's a really good solution to that, because something like Noita, people get vaporized on the first floor a few too many times in Noita and they put it down forever. So I get why there's an interest in lowering the skill floor a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, well, that's just an issue. I don't want to say issue, but just a quirk of the roguelike genre in general, where it sort of goes against the, I guess, conventional gamer's wisdom of like, okay, I'm going to play this game and get through it and get better. Like, I still think roguelikes aren't as popular as some other genres, just because like a large part of playing video games to a lot of people is the progression.
Right.
And roguelikes are the antithesis of that. But, like once you switch your brain to sort of how roguelikes are designed, you can find that there's a lot of fun in that starting over like every hour or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to say about competitive versus casual, high level versus low level play on games. That was
Yeah, I think we took it into some interesting directions.
Yeah.
But I am curious, Connor. I assume you've been playing Hellblade 2.
Yes.
Do you have anything to say about this game? Because I've heard a lot, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So this is us moving into games we've been playing.
Yeah,
I've been playing Hellblade 2. Ooh boy.
Yes. Okay. Your reaction is exactly what I've been reading online.
I saw this game was getting 5 out of 10s and it was getting 10 out of 10s, and I think both are 100% deserved. It is an audio-visual spectacle the entire time you're playing.
Like, I hear it's just the best-looking video game ever created.
I don't know if I would
period.
say that. I still think Alan Wake 2 is probably that for me. But it runs a whole lot better than Alan Wake 2, I'll give it that. And it is beautiful. It is awesome in all those ways. And oh my god, is it the most boring video game I've played in my entire life. Oh my god.
Yeah, I've heard this take, and it's baffling to me that like it seems like the gameplay is not as engaging as 1.
Oh no, I don't think that's fair. I think it's exactly you could put me in Hellblade 2 and Hellblade 1 and I wouldn't be able to tell you which it was. They are identical.
See, but that's like a problem, right?
Yes,
like,
because Hellblade 1 wasn't... Hellblade 1 got so much grace for being this visual spectacle and everything by a small studio. They don't get any of that anymore because they're Xbox Studios now.
And they're over like 100 people strong.
Yeah.
They're not a small studio anymore.
They didn't... Yeah, you get no grace on this game, and it is genuinely like, why is it so boring? Everything about this game, it would have been better. I would have paid the same... Well, I didn't pay for it, but I would have paid for it if it was a 30 to 90 minute animated film that you have to wear headphones for, or a VR experience or something. But like, right now what it is a 5-hour audio-visual experience that you have to hold forward on the joystick the entire time. I mean,
so that's kind of what I was hearing, right? It's like beautiful to look at and listen to, but it's so on rails that like it needs to be slightly more video gamey to call itself a video game.
People are calling
it is kind of what I'm hearing.
People are calling it a walking sim, and I don't even think that's fair, because in the great walking sims like Gone Home, and I would even say like there's an argument Outer Wilds is a walking sim, although it definitely has more going on than that. But you are piecing together a puzzle. You are learning on your own on some level. You are choosing where to go, like you said. Whereas in Hellblade, you are 100% on rails from the moment you have any control at all. The combat is kind of fun. I'll give them that. The combat's a little bit fun. It's nothing special, but I'm very grateful when it shows up instead of another puzzle that I like.
And I hear the puzzles are not very compelling either.
They're not compelling. They're not hard. It's one of those puzzles where you see the answer instantly, but it could take you as long as several minutes to input the answer, which is like a huge no-no in puzzle design. Unless the answer is challenging. There are some, if it's a skill check and a puzzle, that's fine. But there are no skill checks in this game. That is just, extremely easy. And there are like moments that are like these huge spectacle set pieces that are pretty fun, but the vast majority of the game is just walking through an admittedly beautiful hallway.
So let me ask you this. In terms of story, like how does this compare to Hellblade 1? Like is it a worthy sequel in that sense?
I didn't finish Hellblade 1 because I got bored with it too.
Oh, okay.
And I don't see myself finishing Hellblade 2. It is fine. The storytelling is very good, if that makes sense, but the story itself I find kind of uninteresting. Like,
yeah, so let me expand on why I asked that, because to me, right, like it's not all like ones and zeros, right? Like if Hellblade 2 had a compelling enough story, I could probably excuse the poor gameplay and puzzles, right? Like if the story is so good, it outweighs those negatives by a ton, then okay, fine, right? Like you get a pass. But it's sounding like that's not the case either.
No, it's not compelling enough. It is just the visuals and the audio. The visuals and the audio are extremely good. The audio especially is something you're not going to get anywhere else. Just not enough games or movies. I mean, I guess no movies really play with this in any meaningful way because they don't expect you to have headphones on. But the audio design in Hellblade is very unique in the way that it plays with spatial audio. And I can't think of any other media that I consume at all that does what Hellblade does in that way. And for that, it's very cool. But it is kind of the natural conclusion of my complaint against something like The Last of Us, where it's like, this feels like it wanted to be a movie. Why is it a video game? And Hellblade is far worse. Like any complaint I've ever had about The Last of Us, throw it out, because Hellblade should have just been a movie. Like
The Last of Us has the bones of like a third-person shooter, right?
But
and like
this doesn't.
And Hellblade
have the bones.
might have a bone or two from a third-person action game, but not much.
It just didn't commit. Yeah. And granted, the combat is kind of fun, although it's strictly one-on-one. At least so far for me. I've never been in anything except one-on-one combat. And also, like, it's kind of hard to tell whether your inputs even matter sometimes in the combat. It's so cinematic. But they kind of nail that. It still feels good. That part feels good. The puzzles feel awful. The walking, it's like, oh, it's funny that path was exactly long enough for you to get out that line of dialogue you wanted to say. Like, come on, guys.
You know what this is reminding me of? And this is going to be a very deep cut. On the PlayStation side of things, this reminds me of the Order 1886. Do you remember that game?
I remember it was black. Was it black and white? I remember it was an early...
It wasn't black and white.
It was an early
PS4
PS4
title. It was on
title.
PlayStation 4. It was stupidly good looking, and it was one of the most boring games I've ever played because it was so on rails. It was so cinematic that like you couldn't really do anything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the analog I'm seeing here with Hellblade 2.
Wasn't there also Rise Son of Rome?
Rise
along
Son
the
of
same
Rome
lines of like linear tech demo games.
I think you're onto something. Although like I have heard like some defenses of Rise Son of Rome over recent years, so I can't comment on it too much, but it is another one of those super on rails games, and I think tech demo is an interesting way to look at it, Mike, because like if you're that on rails, like at a certain point, like, you know, video games are interactive, and yes, you're still moving the character, yes, you're still engaging in some combat and puzzles, but once you're so on rails and you're clearly more focused on showing how pretty something is, it is kind of veering into the territory of like tech demo.
Yeah. I want to say the other very strange thing about Hellblade is I had read that it was like 5 or 6 hours long, and I tend to beat games on the faster side of things. And I had a really cool battle in it that felt like a final boss. Like everything about it was like, yeah, the game could absolutely end after this, and I would actually be happier than I was that it didn't end because I'm 4 hours into the game, and I fought something that felt like a final boss, and then the game just kept going after that, and I was like, oh my god, and I turned it off. I couldn't handle it anymore.
Man.
Like, genuinely, they had this like climactic finale to pretty much every story beat that we'd started so far in the game. And then they're just like, all right, now we're going to meet a bunch of new people.
Oh, yeah, that's weird.
For the last
I was gonna
hour.
say, so maybe you're close to the end of the game, but if you met a bunch of new people, maybe not.
Yeah, well, there could only be like an hour or two left. Like, I have not done any side content at all, and I'm 4 hours in to a 6 hour game. Like,
Right.
So And don't do the side content in this game. Oh my god, do not waste your time.
So you think you're not gonna push through?
I might, but there's just like good games to play. I don't know. I genuinely I wish this studio would make a VR experience. They did make Hellblade 1 VR, but I mean one that like no buttons. I don't want to. Yeah. Gameplay's not their specialty. I just want to see them tell their story in a concise 30 to 90 minutes. Cut the fluff. Do an experience, because this just isn't working.
Yeah, and I don't know. Ordinarily, I'd be content to leave it there, but I think just due to the context this game was released in, we sort of have to talk about how it ties into Xbox and the recent
gun
sort of
held to the
environment
back
there.
of Ninja Theory's head.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, this game released a pretty good critical acclaim. Actually, you know what? It's got like an 81 on Metacritic.
Yeah, but that's an 81 average between 10s and 6s. Like...
Right. But to be honest, like, a lot of the optics around this game, like, obviously not reception wise, because Hi-Fi Rush was really well received, but like in terms of player count and like just Microsoft's sort of weird silence is kind of reminding me of Hi-Fi Rush, and that's kind of unnerving.
I think this game is doing worse than Hi-Fi Rush. Well,
I was going to say, if you look at the Steam, and granted, obviously this is a Game Pass game, it is not the full story.
It's also really hard to look at concurrent players. Looking at the closest analog, right? If you look at the Steam concurrent peak, Hi-Fi Rush had a higher peak than this game. Yeah, but Hi-Fi Rush was also longer.
Much longer, yeah.
It's very hard to look at a concurrent peak on a 5-hour game, because... you know,
This is the prime example of a Game Pass game, I think. A 5-hour game, you know, not, I guess, under average for what you would typically pay for, right? So if you're subscribed to Game Pass, you get this kind of experimental 5-hour experience and probably be kind of satisfied with that. You know, like, this is exactly the kind of game you want on Game Pass to sort of add flavor to the catalog, I think.
This is not a... Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with that 100%. But my beef with it...
but it is not the kind of game that people will buy Game Pass for.
And it's not your summer blockbuster. You release this in May. This is your May release. Like, kids are getting out of school. A lot of people about to play more video games than normal. And you release Hellblade 2, guys? I mean, this is an April game. This is a March game. Like, this is a knock it out in a weekend, a long weekend.
Well, here's the thing, like, game. I really do think they expected this game to be done much sooner.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, this game was kind of the tentpole game that was shown at the Series X reveal.
No, I mean, this game's been in development 7 years, and I play this game, and I don't see where those 7 years went. Granted, I haven't finished it. That's another part
of the equation that, like, the math doesn't math on that, and that also is a little concerning for, I guess, for how trigger-happy Microsoft is right now, right? Like, because 7 years of dev time... Your team has grown to over 100 people, and if your sales do not reflect all of that, then you're kind of in trouble.
I mean, I hate to keep beating this drum, but it would not have taken 7 years to make this as a movie.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't have, and it would have been better, and it would have been... I don't... And it is mostly a movie, so now that I play it, I'm like...
Yeah.
There's, like, you know, like, game design. There is not enough game here to convince me that the game design took very long. There's not enough gameplay for me to believe that took very long to throw together. Like, it's all audio visual, and I don't understand how that took 7 years.
And obviously we don't know this. We're not a fly on the wall at Ninja Theory, but it's hard for me to believe that a lot of those 7 years were just focused on pushing the visuals as far as they can go, because that does not seem like a good use of your development time.
No, and I mean, the visuals are good, but I don't agree with the people saying it's the best they've ever seen at all. It's nice. It's got some nice stylistic moments. It's got some cool stuff, but I would still say Alan Wake 2 looks a lot better than it.
Plus, you know, like, to me, something like Alan Wake 2 is more impressive because it's an actual...
It's a game.
Video game.
There's stuff to do. And Alan Wake 2 is also very...
Hellblade 2 is a video game, but, like, being as on rails as it is makes the visuals less impressive to me.
Right. And Alan Wake 2 is very on rails, honestly. And they just did it better. Like, it's a very linear narrative story. You can walk wherever you want to go, I guess, but there's no reason to.
So I don't know. Like, I think there's a difference between a linear game and an on-rails game.
Yeah.
And like it sounds like a lot of Hellblade 2 is like you're watching, right?
You genuinely could not turn around and go backwards if you wanted to. Like,
okay, so that's like the definition of on rails.
you were constantly like
You're literally on like a minecart going forward through the game.
You go down a slope and then you can't go back up that slope. Like, you're just constantly gated in that way. It's not like you literally can't turn around. You have full third-person action control for most of the games. Because
don't get me wrong, I love linear games. Like, I always have. But that's a level of linearity. That's a level of being like too on rails for me, I think.
I mean, I don't know if I would say that it's more. It is more, but like not by a whole lot than like Uncharted. Like, you can't turn around and go backwards in Uncharted either. So,
okay,
that's what I meant.
Well,
like
I see what you mean, but like there's areas you can explore, right? Like,
and that
it's
is
not like a contiguous world, but like you can go back on like while you're in a level and explore something, unless you like block that off or something.
In Hellblade,
but is Hellblade 2 similar or like more on rails than that?
It's just a little more than that. Hellblade, you're largely moving between in what is a barely disguised hallway in between combat arenas and puzzle areas that are very obviously that. Like, it doesn't feel like
I don't know. Like, I guess a lot of it is like the presentation too, because like describing it like that, then I mean, like a lot of single player adventure games are that.
Right.
But like,
genuinely,
it's just how you present it.
The problem is that the gameplay's boring.
Tricking your brain into feeling like it's an actual like cohesive kind of front to back experience rather than something you're like put on and have to like push yourself through.
It's also really, really annoying. It has the God of War Ragnarok problem, which I haven't actually played, but that people complained about, where the solution of the puzzle is given to you instantly.
Right, I hate that.
Senua is a character that has voices in her head. I don't know. I always think of it as an analog for schizophrenia. I don't know how accurate that is. In the game, It is suggested that she is like a seer, so like it's kind of unclear whether the voices are in her head exclusively or whether they are actual like entities in her or speaking to her. But either way,
which is a cool sort of idea to explore.
I agree. I think that's neat. The problem is they don't do anything with it, and the voices tell you the solutions to the puzzles. They're like, "Oh, Senua, she'll never figure out that she has to put the box on the button." Like, that's not a real example, but it is basically that.
Yeah,
like she'll never figure out that she has to.
That's
light the torch.
Been a problem with the recent Sony first party games, and I really dislike that because that was not a thing in like Uncharted 1 through 4.
It
by
was.
Any stretch of the
you could turn it off. It was there. It was an option.
It was
in the
there,
settings.
but it was. Dude, it was there, but it wasn't literally instantaneous.
No, yeah,
right?
you had to turn it on.
In God of War Ragnarok, you literally walk into a room and Atreus is like, "Hey, why don't we do this?" I'm like, "Dude,
shut up,
Atreus, shut up."
This wasn't a hard puzzle in the first place, and you've taken what little joy there was. Now it is just that I have to do the annoying part, putting in
Horizon
the solution.
Forbidden West was the same thing. So, like, I really dislike. I don't know. Sony might have some internal like metrics that show them that players prefer just getting through the puzzle. I really don't like that. Like, I hope they backtrack.
No, just take the puzzles
that's a
out.
different
Like,
point.
Hellblade is another game. Like, because I think you should. Even the first God of War, I would just take all the puzzles out. They did nothing for me, and I feel the exact same way about Hellblade. Some of the stuff, they're genuinely one of the best parts of the game. You're going through a den of the hidden folk, I think they're called, and the puzzles are deeply boring, and there's too many of them. But there are a few things that happen during the puzzles that are kind of narrative-y that I would keep. And so maybe just reduce the number of puzzles. But like, come on, guys. I don't know. I don't understand. Like, I know Ninja Theory could have done better than this. And it is frustrating. It is really frustrating. And unless I'm pretty bored, I don't see myself finishing it. Like I'm halfway through and I put it down to play more Monster Hunter because that's a good game. Like, that I'm actually really having fun with still.
Yeah, I mean, gameplay is king.
Yeah.
Right? Like, obviously you can have a really compelling narrative that can carry a lot of it, but at the end of the day, you're playing a video game. So gameplay has to be an important aspect.
You can have one of like there's very little gameplay to Gone Home, and it's one of and like zero gameplay to The Beginner's Guide, but both of those are very special games to me. The difference is that the narrative like piqued my interest at all, and I do not feel that at all in Hellblade.
Narrative and sense of exploration is also important in those kind of games where you're just sort of walking around.
Yeah. Yeah, you never like
Gone Home had that like
Gone Home had that in
mystery
spades.
That what is behind this door? Like, what am I going to find out about this situation?
I had said this entire time listening, but it seems to me that Ninja Theory kind of just doubled down on the cinematic aspects of games while forgetting what made a game.
See, you're a walking sim hater, though, right,
I
Mike?
am.
So you're right. Like, this is a game that I want to have more gameplay in it because it doesn't meet the needs that I have from a walking sim. Because I'm a walking sim enjoyer. I love Firewatch. I love Gone Home. I love The Beginner's Guide.
When they're done right, they can be very compelling games.
But I do think it's not a smart idea to put a walking sim-esque game as like your big summer release game in your
100%
slate. Like
that.
I mean, it kind of goes beyond that. Not only is this their big summer game, this is like one of their big games for the console period. Like, this was advertised when the Series X was shown for the first time.
And this is
this is one of the promises you made to the Xbox community.
This is a niche game. Like, this is a game I think you would get the same amount of enjoyment I got out of it, Ahmed, which is to say some, definitely not zero. And I could even see you liking it more than I did, potentially. It's just kind of a toss-up, but Mike, you shouldn't even bother. You shouldn't even look at this game.
I looked at it, heard it had about 5 to 8 hours of gameplay, and thought, no, it just looks like another one of those tech demo games.
And when you're gonna poise a game like this, like Mike said, it should, at bare minimum, appeal to all three of us, I would think.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a AAA game. They're meant to be for the masses. You can't really do this hyper niche, like, small indie game, Gone Home style narrative.
Right.
Because you want it to sell. The game, the Hellblade 2 probably cost Ninja Theory millions upon millions. And if you don't go for cast that net as wide as possible, you're just going to lose millions of dollars with nothing to show for it.
I do, like I said, I do want to discuss the game on its own merits typically, but this being a unique situation, it does open up that wider discussion of like, for this game to make sense financially, it has to get a lot of Game Pass subs or get a lot of people to renew their subs. And I don't know if this game did that. In terms of that, I think it's in the same tier as something like Hi-Fi Rush, where like financially that game did not do well at all.
What I'm hearing,
at least that's kind of the impression I'm getting right now.
I don't know if that's the case with Hi-Fi Rush.
What I'm hearing is that Ninja Theory is going to.
I mean, it certainly didn't do well enough because it.
No, that's not fair.
Studio.
Hi-Fi Rush. I mean, they were singing its praises. They said it broke even. Like we have on record, they said that they shuttered it because it didn't set the world on fire.
Yeah.
Dude, like, at the end of the day, they shuttered it because it didn't make them enough money. Like, that, it always comes down to money.
It's the line where enough money is, though. And I think Hi-Fi Rush made enough money to justify its cost, and there's no chance in hell that Hellblade 2 will do that. It is unimaginable to me that Hellblade 2 will recoup its costs.
It's interesting because, like, apparently, Xbox has already greenlit Ninja Theory's next game, but I'm sorry, I don't believe. I don't
buy it. Not after their current behavior.
And it doesn't feel right if they do greenlight it and pass that. When you have a studio that put in a game that was good for everyone, and everyone uniquely loved, and replaced it with like a studio like Ninja Theory, who's releasing these super niche games now.
I'm not here to say that I would trade Ninja Theory for Tango. That's not, like, I would not revert.
I'd 100% trade Ninja Theory for Arcane Austin.
Okay.
Like, 100%. No doubt.
I'm just not in a trading lives mood, I guess. But, like, I don't think that's fair. But I do think, yes, I think based on this one release, if we're going to judge everybody based on their most recent releases,
which it seems like Xbox is doing, by the way.
Yeah, I think that Ninja Theory is an insane choice over Tango and Arcane Austin, because even Redfall seemed more fun than this.
Right? Like, yes, their next game was greenlighted, but I don't think in any world that makes them safe.
No, I agree. They're not afraid to cancel a game.
Yeah.
And Microsoft already said that like more cuts are coming in the future, so I guess it's a game of kind of Russian roulette to see if Ninja Theory is one of the ones.
I just can't imagine that they're not after this. And it's not even their fault. They should have never been given this amount of money for this game.
They should have never. Yeah, they should have never. I mean, some things kind of just make sense from like like a brand perspective, like as much as I don't like it, it kind of makes sense for Microsoft and Xbox to own Call of Duty, right? Like it just sort of makes sense.
Right.
But for them to own something like Ninja Theory, Hellblade, that's just not
I don't see the
congruent with
value.
their
No.
kind of brand that they've established themselves as. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't even mention this. This was a weirdly PC first game, like as far as I could tell.
Yeah, it's stuck at like 30 FPS on console.
Oh, really?
And-
It was frame rate was great on PC, although it topped out at 60.
Well, keep in mind for console, right? Like they have to keep the Series S in mind. So
which is probably why development took so long. In part.
yeah, and especially for something with as like cutting edge visuals as this, for run on like a, I guess, comparatively low end machine like that, must have taken some magic behind the scenes.
Well, even on this game doesn't run at 4K anywhere. You cannot run this game at 4K without modding it. It's impossible.
Really?
Yeah, because it renders in ultra wide with black bars.
Oh, right, for the cinematic like black bars and all that.
Yeah, and I hate that. I hate black bars on my screen. It's not as bad on an OLED, but this game, most people are not playing on an OLED, and I just, maybe this doesn't bother other people as much as it bothers me, but like that gray light on an LCD screen when you have those black bars bothers me.
Oh, that's awful.
That's all I would be seeing.
The only reason the black bars don't bother me in something like, I guess, Death Stranding is because of the OLED.
Yeah.
Like the OLED fixes that problem, for me at least.
Yeah, if you're in a dark room with an OLED, you don't even know that they're there. But I played it on my PC and it has like perfect ultra wide support, which makes sense. So I don't have the black bars even at all.
Nice.
And so that was nice. It just felt, I don't know, it felt more at home on PC because like how many console players are playing on an ultra wide screen? I know it's not that common on PC either, but it at least happens at all. I can't imagine it happens very often on console. I'd be shocked if the Series X even really supports it. I don't know. Just a weird. I think I had one other PC first point about it. Oh, also headphones. That was the other point where like I know it's not zero, but like how many people have headphones connected to their Xbox? I can't imagine it's like the vast majority of people.
Well, yeah, I mean like this game, I feel like for those playing it know that this is a must play for headphones. Like you have to play this game on headphones,
right?
Otherwise you lose a lot.
If you don't have headphones, then you shouldn't bother. Like genuinely, even the visual spectacle and stuff. If you're not wearing headphones, I don't think it's worth your time at all. Even like everything good I've said about the game, you can just throw it out if you're not wearing headphones. That's the whole, like all the uniqueness would be gone. I guess an adequate surround sound system could maybe do it too, but I think it would have to be
like pretty
probably like a
robust surround sound,
5-figure surround sound system, probably. Yeah.
Like to accurately reflect all the directionality of the audio.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Like a perfectly tuned. Yeah. I have a hard time believing that's it more likely than you having headphones. I just don't know who this was for from Xbox's perspective.
It's man, like it's wild that every time we talk about Xbox, we go on like these huge tirades, but it does seem to me like Xbox, it wants to be like kind of trying to be two identities, right? It's trying to be this place where all these kind of quirky, unique kind of art house games can live via Game Pass, but it's also trying to be like the next home for Call of Duty. And I don't know if it can like do both of those things simultaneously, but I think it's trying.
Did you all see Call of Duty's coming day one to Game Pass? That's been announced.
I did, and that's something we can probably save for another episode because there's a lot to say about that, I think.
Yeah. Just interesting on that note. I don't know.
Yeah, very interesting.
I think we could probably move on from Hellblade now, but it's not an easy recommendation from me. If you had any interest in it, if you have Game Pass, you might as well check it out. It's not even that big of a game, storage wise. So,
and plus, I don't know. Like, I do think there's an audience for this kind of game where, like, this is, like I said, it's getting 10s and 5s, right? So you might like really, really like it.
It's just usually I would think I am the audience. Like, I'm usually the one who likes the weird artsy games, but like this, it ain't it for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
because it feels more like an artsy movie than an artsy game. And I hate I hate a game that doesn't feel like it wants to be a video game. That it's a huge nuisance to me.
All right. Well, we went on a long time about Hellblade, but I want to talk about Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. So this is the remake of the GameCube game. They're just calling it Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Like no remake, no remaster, no like epithet attached to it. It's just Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door.
Didn't they do that with
again
Super
on
Mario
Switch.
RPG as well?
Yeah, that's what they did. So like I
Yeah.
think Nintendo just wants this to be the definitive version of the game going forward. And it's interesting to me, the original Paper Mario on Nintendo 64, I replayed many times as a kid. Like front to back, many, many times. So I'm very much like intimately familiar with that game. The Thousand Year Door, I think I only fully played through once on GameCube.
It's like the darling of the franchise, isn't it?
Yeah, it was my favorite game. It's one of my favorite games ever. But I only ever played through it once, like fully. I think I might have started some other playthroughs. I don't know what 12-year-old me was doing at the time. Maybe I had other things going on.
Well, it's pretty
Who
long
knows?
too, right?
It's a long game. Like main path is like 30 hours.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot longer than Super Mario RPG.
It's a full-fledged RPG. And I'm playing it again for the first time in let's say like
Nearly 20
15
years.
plus years maybe. And I'm just falling in love with it again. It's crazy to me how much I've forgotten, actually. Like, so much of it is just like I'm playing it for the first time because I just don't remember
Yeah.
a lot of it. Like, I remember things like certain places, I remember things like certain characters, but a lot of the plot I don't remember. A lot of like the charm and the levels and like the items and even some of the companions, like all those things I have forgotten, which is great. I love that because it's like playing this game again for the first time. And I don't know, man. I think there's really something special about Mario RPGs that like they capture a unique quirkiness, a unique charm, and these games are just really funny too, like genuinely funny.
The old ones, certainly. Yeah. Like the Thousand Year Door, the original Paper Mario, even Super Paper Mario. I'm a huge Super Paper Mario fan.
Yeah, Super Paper Mario 2. Like the writing in that game was really good. It's just a shame that like the gameplay, I mean, I guess depending on what
I thought it was
camp you're
fine.
in, but, like,
I don't like turn. I'm an anti-turn-based
I know
combat.
you're an anti-turn-based,
but it's not.
guy.
It's
I
not
think-
that good. Like, yeah.
I think the Thousand Year Door is the pinnacle of combat in Mario RPGs. I think they perfected it with this one.
Have you played Mario and Luigi
Which is
games?
just- I've played a little bit, yeah.
I
And
really
which-
like the combat in those, which
right,
is similar.
and the combat in those is very similar to the
Yeah.
combat in this one. And I just think it's wild that Nintendo, after basically mastering turn-based combat with Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, just threw it literally all away for their next Paper Mario game. I just don't
Yeah.
know the impetus behind that.
They don't like to retread old ground.
A lot of what made the change Paper Mario was because they had Mario and Luigi as their turn-based series, and Miyamoto didn't want two turn-based RPGs.
Yeah, they also they largely perfected on rails shooters with Star Fox, and they threw that away too. They just keep remaking 64. Nintendo just does that. But
They do.
there is, and this is another thing. It's not really about the Thousand Year Door, but there are reasons to believe Nintendo is investigating a return to that sort of game. They've been putting out surveys and stuff.
Absolutely. Like, to me, this definitely seems like a litmus test kind of game. Like, it's crazy to me that they remade Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Like, after showing zero interest in returning to this type of game for the past, like, decade plus.
Right.
Now we suddenly have an extremely polished, modernized Thousand Year Door remake. And I think this is Nintendo saying, okay, you've been asking for this for a long time now. Show us you really want this, and we might go down this path again. So I really hope that, like, the people who asked for this show up, and even new people. Like, I do think this game, for the most part, just holds up really well. Like, I do think it'll be a hit with, like, new audiences, new kids today. I do think there are some game design philosophies in it that are a little outdated. Like, there is quite a bit of backtracking that I don't think is like tolerated much in modern games.
Yeah.
That is present in the Thousand Year Door, but I do think a lot of it is mitigated by just the sheer charm of the game, in my opinion, at least.
I watched the Game Grumps play through this game, actually. That's the only way I've experienced it, and they did not find out until the very end that you could level up your companions.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. They had no idea.
That is something about this game that, like, you do have to, like, it is a game with, like, hidden things and secrets that, like, obviously it doesn't go, like, insanely deep, but there are things and mechanics that you probably won't ever see if you don't look.
Right.
Which is an interesting thing for a Mario RPG to have. Like a lot of the, I guess, like the star pieces and the shine sprites, which by the way, there are shine sprites in this game. I remember, right, like this game came out in the same era as Super Mario Sunshine, so there are kind of holdovers from that game too, like the shines and like the little like I forget what they're called, but like the people on Delfino Island, like
Piantas.
Yeah, there are Piantas in this game too, which is cool.
I love Mario Sunshine, dude. I also want to give a shout out to my girl Vivian. They did her dirty in the original translation. She is a trans woman, and that was pretty clear in the Japanese translation originally, and they rectify that in the new one.
Really?
Her story is told properly in the
Yeah, I'm in the middle of chapter 4 right now. So Vivian hasn't really like Vivian has shown up, but like hasn't really been a part of the story yet.
Yeah. Yep, they get her right this time, and that's awesome. You know, I mean, I guess it took long enough, but yeah.
Yeah, it's cool to see that, like, things like that have been rectified.
Yeah.
In this re-release of the game. They have added some other, like, quality of life updates, like, and it's so hard to remember, right? Because I don't remember if these features were in the original game or, like, these are streamlined. My hunch is that, like, they've done some streamlining, but there's things where, like, if there's repeat dialogue, you can skip through it faster. Like, if you've already watched a cutscene once, you can skip it. Like, things like that, which are definitely kind of time-saving convenience things that I don't think were in the original game, but I can't be too sure. But, yeah, man, I'm having a great time with this game. It's like I said, like, the biggest thing to me is just, I love the turn-based combat, and plus that, coupled with the charm and the wit of the writing, and just existing in this fully fleshed out world, like, it really feels like you're going on an adventure in this game, and I love that aspect. And the whole thing, right, like a story after my own heart. It's basically a treasure hunt, and we all know how I feel about treasure hunts, right? Between Uncharted and One Piece,
right? And
it's kind of my thing, I guess.
It's a good one too. And
but yeah, it's a compelling treasure hunt, and there are segments where you play as like Peach and Bowser, and I actually like totally forgot about that. Like when that first happened, I was like, oh yeah, now I remember. Like this was like a big part of the game.
I forgot you play as Bowser. I remembered the Peach part. Yeah,
so it does sort of experiment that way, and like it does almost feel like each place you go to for a crystal star is like a new chapter, right? It's a new chapter and it's a totally new setting, and it's like a totally new story arc.
Right.
It almost feels like like when the One Piece, like the Straw Hat Cruise goes to a new island.
For sure.
It has that same feeling.
Because
which I love.
Yeah, you get new characters that you like. You get a new crew member a lot of the time.
New crew member. Like literally every time you go to a new place, you get a new addition to your party, and a new set of characters with new problems to solve, a new storyline. Like chapter 3, I thought like the actual story and the mystery was pretty compelling. Like you're in this
is that the train?
Glitzville, right?
Oh, right.
Which is this like floating island in the sky where like this like wrestling kind of operation is happening, and there's shady things happening behind the scene. Fighters are disappearing. Meanwhile, you're entering the fights and working your way up the rankings. It's really kind of fun stuff.
And they just nail it with the writing too.
Yeah, that can't be overstated enough. The writing is so witty, so charming, and genuinely funny. Like there are moments that will make you laugh.
Yeah.
Which is really cool to see in a Mario RPG. You wouldn't think that going in, but like it is a funny game. And the other thing I'll say, like just a bit more about the combat, like I am playing it differently to how I played it as a kid, because I remember when I was a kid, every time I leveled up, I'd alternate putting points into each of the 3 main things you can put points into when you level up. So HP, FP, which is like your magic bar basically, and BP, which is your badge power, right? So badges are like things you can equip that gives you modifiers, that give you different skills, etc. And when I was a kid, when I played Paper Mario and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, like every time I'd level up, I just make sure they would like all have an even amount of points. This time, I'm just pouring all of my points into BP, just because I think that's like, I don't know, like older me thinks that's a more interesting way to play the game. And I'm really enjoying it, right? Like I get all these badges and I can use the majority of them now. because like I'm not putting as many points into HP and FP, and it really just makes Mario kind of really versatile, gives him a lot of skills, gives him a lot of passives, and makes the game more interesting to play, which is not something I even considered as a kid. But there really are different ways to play this game, right? So if you want like to be more tanky, HP focused, you can do that. If you want to focus on having lots of FP so you can actually use like your skills more, you can do that. Or you could do what I'm doing and focus more on BP and just sort of have like lots of things available to you, lots of passives active at the same time, and just have that be the way you play the game. And I'm really enjoying it playing it from that angle. And it's not something I ever did as a kid, which is cool. But yeah, like I think I'm like 15 hours in or something. Like it's a wonderful game. Like it has a few relics from the past in it, but I think for the most part, like 95% of it still very well holds up to this day, which is something you love to see, right? Like this is a GameCube game that ostensibly could be released today.
I think that's just true of a lot of GameCube games. Timeless Nintendo era, for sure.
Yeah, Wind Waker also comes to mind. Shout out to Wind Waker.
Other than the blue coins.
Yeah. Oh, the one thing I will say, I want to comment on the visuals. It looks fantastic, but at like certain times I do find myself wondering why a certain visual design was made. Like, for instance, like every floor is hyper clean and reflective and shiny. And it's just weird.
Was it that way on the GameCube?
It was not that way on the GameCube, right? Like, so even like if you go into like a grassland area, the grass is like reflective slightly for some reason. And I'm just like, it's cool that you can do this, but like artistically, this does not make sense.
Well, my question is, why is it 30 FPS?
That's the other big thing, right? Like this game is running at 30 frames per second. The original GameCube version was 60 frames per second.
Really?
And I'm like, look, if you could maybe take out some of these unnecessary reflections, maybe you could like bump the frame rate up instead, which would be way more appreciated.
I mean, I have a really hard time even
because
thinking
like
that's why.
A lot of the combat, right? Yes, it's turn based, but you actively have to input for like a lot of it. And yes, they made the like timing window easier, but like they might not have had to because like a 60 FPS game is just way more responsive than a 30 FPS game.
It also just like there's not a lot of polygons in this game. It's Paper Mario.
I don't understand why it's at 30 FPS, and I don't understand some of the art decisions. Like, yes, it looks really good, and yes, for the most part, like, I like the visual overhaul, but, like, some of it does not jive artistically, I think. Like, the floors are the big thing. Like, one time, like, so there's a significant chunk of the game where you're under Rogueport, the main city, and you're, like, in the sewers. Right? You're in the freaking sewers, and the floors are so clean and shiny and reflective, and I'm like, dude, come on.
Killing the vibe, yeah.
This is not right. Like,
nothing in Rogueport should be shiny.
It looks cool, but like, yeah, exactly. Nothing in Rogueport should be. It's a grungy pirate town. It should be kind of filthy, but like, the new art style makes everything hyper reflective and like chrome and clean looking, and I just don't really like that. So, well, I do appreciate, like, the sharp polygons. I think I would prefer almost even the old art style. Like, if there was an option, right? Like, getting the 60 FPS, getting, like, the original art style without, like, the hyper shiny reflective surfaces, I would prefer that. But again, I think that's an overall minor quibble in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, please buy it, please play it, please convince Nintendo to make more games like this. That's all I'll say.
What you been playing, Mike?
So remember last week when I said I bought some Assassin's Creed games?
Yes.
I finally got around to playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I'm real mixed on it at the moment.
I think that's a common conclusion.
One, I boot it up, I immediately see that there is a real money cash shop in a game that as of right now on Steam still retails for $60 standard edition, $120 ultimate edition.
Yeah, that's
real
really
money cash shop.
You can't ignore all that though. I never spent a cent in that game.
I don't even think you'll be tempted to. I can't think of what they would even sell you.
You can buy things like XP buffs and stuff. It's really,
it's like XP buffs and cosmetics and stuff.
So the kind of thing where they like
offers.
They make the game grindy so that you can buy your way out of the grind.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Like, it's like, because Odyssey is one of I think the last Assassin's Creed I really sunk my teeth into. And I've had my criticisms of like the RPG style Assassin's Creeds in the past, but I would probably say Odyssey is my favorite of that genre of Assassin's Creed.
Also, its focus on combat
not
makes
that
me
grindy,
mad.
I don't think. What's
Like
that?
how much combat the game throws at you as just like, oh, you remember combat? Because the combat's bad. The combat's not enjoyable.
I don't like. I agree with you. I think the combat in the Assassin's Creed RPG games is a far cry from the previous titles, and like not a good fit for that franchise.
Yeah, it's just not good. It like, and they push so much of it on you. Like Odyssey has conquest battles, and it's all combat, and the combat's not the most enjoyable part of the game. The character feels too weighty when he moves too. Like you don't feel like you're free, you're free running like the older games. You kind of feel slow and clunky.
It is weird, like especially in the RPG era. Like I wonder why they're even Assassin's Creed games at that point.
Yeah,
right? Because like you're the furthest thing from an assassin.
If it didn't have Assassin's Creed in the name, like it'd be a much better game if they just got rid of Assassin's Creed.
Because especially in Odyssey, like you have like powers too, so you're like teleporting everywhere, slashing people up with like an axe, and like I'm like, what part of this is assassiny to anyone?
And stealth assassinations only work on the standard guys so far.
That's so lame.
It's so lame.
The RPGifying of it is annoying too, because like when you assassinate someone, it should just kill them. But because it's an RPG, this guy might have like too much of a health bar. So when you assassinate them, it just does a quarter of their health. And I'm like, dude, come on.
It's up there with this game also falls. It also has the common looter element of +6 to random stat that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't explain to you. So I have a weapon that does +4 poison damage. And it doesn't explain whether it increases poison damage that I already do or adds poison damage to it. And there's nothing to tell me this. So I really have not cared. Like +4%.
Yeah.
Like does it matter? Is that 4% really meaningful in the long scale?
I hate numbers in action games.
It's so
well, that's
bad.
the thing. Like they made Assassin's Creed into an RPG when no one asked for it to be an RPG.
God, can you imagine if they did that to God of War or Spider-Man?
Can you imagine if they keep
Well,
doing
that's the thing.
it?
Like God of War and Spider-Man are not RPGs, but like they literally made Assassin's Creed into an RPG.
Yeah,
but like
it's just the natural conclusion of the thing that's happening everywhere else, though. In my opinion, it's like they just did it worse.
It's a significant step further, right? Like there's a far cry between including some RPG elements and then literally just making your game about I don't know. It's like, and I think I'm in the minority here because I think Assassin's Creed is more popular than ever before. I just like really prefer the older games.
Yeah. Is it really?
I've been playing 3 and Odyssey.
Valhalla
at the
was
same
the best-selling
time,
game
and
in the series,
I'm enjoying 3
dude.
far more.
Really? 3's like the worst one.
No, 3 was pretty good. Like 3's,
I hate it.
People slept on 3 a little bit. I think 3's like wilderness parkour was beautiful, and it's a shame they didn't actually bother putting it into modern games.
See, I hated it. The setting just didn't work for me. Like the parkour just didn't.
The mechanics feel good though. It feels much better mechanically than Odyssey does. I also bought 4.
Wait, so are you playing 3 and Odyssey at the same time?
I just started 3 last night. I've been craving like an older Assassin's Creed, and I thought Odyssey would scratch the itch, so I started it, and then
you
didn't
gotta go older
scratch
than
the
that,
itch.
bro.
So I'm gonna play through 3 and 4.
Did you actually buy them, or are you using Ubi Play Plus or whatever?
I bought them. I own them on Steam now. They were all on sale last week, so it wasn't really that much. I think I spent $40 for 4, 3, and Odyssey with Odyssey's Ultimate Edition.
Have you played Black Flag before?
Oh yeah, I love Black Flag.
Okay, that's like the best one.
Black Flag's great.
Black Flag's fantastic.
It's like it's not good as an Assassin's Creed game, but it's an excellent game. I would say.
I will say though, like Odyssey, like I agree with all of your criticisms. I did eventually just manage to stomach them, and once I did have fun with that game. Like there's just an absurd amount of stuff to do and see in that game. And granted, like the gameplay is kind of not all that satisfying, but like eventually I just like stuffed down my preconceived notions of what an Assassin's Creed should be and engage the game on its terms, and I ended up enjoying it. But like I do think that yes, if I had a choice, Assassin's Creed should go back to the old
and
style.
I am a sucker for ship combat, so having a trireme is pretty neat.
That's pretty
It's
cool.
a little annoying though, because there's so many enemies that'll just auto aggro on you when you're trying to just go from place to place.
Well, you know, Mike, there is one new game you could play to get a hold of that classic Assassin's Creed goodness, but you'll have to bust out the MetaQuest 2, blow the dust off that bad boy, and play Assassin's Creed Nexus.
I heard Mirage was good too. I need to check out Mirage.
So here's the thing, and I talked about Mirage when it came out because I played it. It is a step in the right direction, Mike, but like it still holds over too many things from the RPG Assassin's Creed. Like the combat is ripped straight from the RPG games, which is not what I wanted, right? Like it's not it takes a step towards the older games but doesn't fully commit. And then like it kind of just it was kind of a wet blanket to me because of that. But maybe your opinion will be different.
Unity's
I don't think any of that's in. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't
Nothing
believe any of
else
that's in
but
Nexus.
Unity is.
Nexus has no RPG mechanics, I don't believe. It is just first-person VR, classic Assassin's Creed.
I know you guys touched on it last week, but I'm kind of intrigued by Assassin's Creed Shadows.
I am as well.
Yeah, me too.
It's just that, like, I fear that the second they show gameplay, it'll either be like, okay, we reworked everything and I'm in, or then I see the same RPG nonsense and I'm like, oh, I really don't want this. So I'm just sort of waiting for gameplay at this point. But, like, the premise seems very cool to me.
This is an insane... I don't know. But this is an insane take. So be prepared for me to say, like, an absolutely stupid thing that I'm about to say.
Sure.
It would be weird for me to see a game that takes place in feudal Japan without some RPG mechanics. Like, every game I can think of with that setting is an RPG.
I mean, Ghost of Tsushima is like an action game.
Is it?
It's not an RPG.
I thought it had...
It's like an action... It's like in the same vein as I guess God of War, right? Like it's
Mirage
like yes,
is only on Epic Games, so I'm never gonna play it. Got it.
It's a timed exclusive, probably.
No, it was a year ago, so
well.
yeah, it's been a bit.
But yeah, I don't know. Like the setting, like I said, has been explored a lot lately.
It has,
like for Assassin's Creed Shadows, but the protagonist is very interesting to me. And he's an actual guy, right? Like Yasuke was an actual black
samurai.
He was like a black slave in the shogunate that became a samurai, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be. We've talked about how historically accurate Assassin's Creed is. I imagine they're going to go off the rails a little bit on that,
dude. Like, I mean, but here's the thing, like, and I don't know if I want to get into the whole like discourse online about this, but like, Assassin's Creed is always like, yes, the settings are historical. But the plot has always been nonsense.
Yes.
At the end of 2, you have a fist fight with the Pope underneath, like, the Vatican.
Yeah,
like,
and it's cool.
What are you talking about?
Cool.
You know, it's
yeah, and it's going to be cool.
It's all fantastical.
Yeah. It's going to be cool when it's Yasuke too. I don't know. People who are racists just
historical accuracy in Assassin's Creed. Since when? The story's
and plus,
nonsensical.
you know, like this is the actual first Assassin's Creed game that has a protagonist based on someone who actually existed.
Yeah.
Like, it's even more historically accurate than it usually is.
No, if this was a bunch of Japanese people that were mad that the Japanese Assassin's Creed game doesn't have a Japanese protagonist, there'd be an argument.
But it does.
It does also,
like,
it has two protagonists for one thing.
The woman is Japanese, so.
But also, like, that's not what it is. It's a bunch of racists. Like,
right, yeah. That's like, that's definitely the loudest voice, I think.
Like, I got nothing to say to them. They're just... Have you seen how many of them are like, why haven't they made an Assassin's Creed game that takes place in Africa when they literally did that? Like,
yeah, they have...
Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt, notably in Africa.
They've had Assassin's Creed games on every continent at this point now.
They haven't done Australia, have they?
They haven't done South America, right?
I'd consider that parts of for
Black
take
Flag.
place. Yeah, in the
Black
South
Flag.
America, Central
yeah.
America area.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll give you that, but I don't think there's anything in Australia.
Yeah, I don't think they've done an Australian one. Then again, there's not that much interesting history to like throw away with Australia unless you want to make an assassin an emu.
Well, counterpoint, I think if any game series can find the interesting history, it's Assassin's Creed. That's like one thing they're the masters of that, right? Like, and that's the other thing too. Like, that's the thing. Like, despite my opinion on Assassin's Creed, like degrading over the years, like the different settings and how they explore them. They've always been masters of that, and I will always be excited to see a new Assassin's Creed setting because of that.
Like, it's super novel. Like, going back to 3 was novel because, it's the American Revolution, but you're playing as a Native American.
Yeah, you were like half Native American, half British, which is an interesting perspective to have.
Yeah, you were in a weird perspective of the Revolution. Or, what was it? Assassin's Creed 1 was during the Crusades, but you were you were Middle Eastern. Like, you were from the area, not just a crusader.
The conceit of most Assassin's Creed games is very interesting, but if they could only like, if the gameplay could be equally as interesting, then this would be like an all-timer franchise, I think. But sadly, that is not the case.
And it's not even like the new games are bad. I would say they're just a little.
They're not bad.
They're boring.
Right? They're just. Yeah, they're just a lot.
They're a really good game.
Like, there's no reason for Odyssey to be like 200 hours. There's no reason for Valhalla to be like.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is like
sometimes less is more.
If you're a gamer in high school on a tight budget and you want a game that's gonna last you 200 hours, Assassin's Creed has got you. Yeah.
Assassin's Creed is that game for sure. So like I said, like I do think my opinion is in the minority. Like most people do seem to like the new format of Assassin's Creed. So more power to you, I guess. Wow, we've been going on for a while.
Yeah, it's just a long
Anything else we want to talk about?
I want to say, I'll be quick, because I've already talked about this before, but I finally rolled credits on Monster Hunter World Iceborne. It took me like 80 hours, I think, total, and I did not do a lot of side content in that time, so it's kind of crazy how long it took. I did grind up to get stronger a few times, but great game. Did get a little monotonous towards the end, where it was just like largely a lot of monsters I'd already fought, fighting them again. But then once you beat the final boss and roll the credits, you unlock an entire new area that has like, it is mechanically different from the entire rest of the game. It is like you go there and you hunt monsters until you're done. Like normally you hunt the monsters on a timer. And once you hunt them, you return to town. In this one, you go there and you just hunt until you decide you're done hunting, like just back to back to back monsters. And it's heavily encouraged to do this multiplayer and to just kind of like, it's a place to vibe and just really have fun with your in-game gear, which I think is brilliant. And there are new monsters there that you haven't seen yet. So there is like a reason to spend a lot of time there. So that's just the game that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard the praises of Iceborne, so it sounds like you agree with a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much time I'm going to spend in guide. Yeah, Iceborne is like... Monster Hunter World was an extremely good game. Once you throw in Iceborne, it is just absurd how good that game is. Really can't recommend it enough. Some people are going to bounce. It's like notorious. You don't get into Monster Hunter the first time you try to. You get into it the second time. That's like the story for like a ton of people.
What's going to happen to me?
Maybe. I hope not. If you think it is, we should try Rise. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I tried Monster Hunter World once already.
Oh, really?
Like if I try it again,
yeah. No, it is also true that Monster Hunter is like deeply complex unless you have a friend who's played it before who can tell you the parts that you need to pay attention to. Because the games don't do a super good job of onboarding, really. Whereas, like, if you have a buddy who can tell you which parts are actually important, it's a little easier. But yeah, I mean, it's not a 10 out of 10 in the sense that I would recommend it to anybody because these are, it's a 100-hour game and all that. But I really liked it. I struggle to think of a way to improve it. So I'm excited to see. I'll probably play Rise once I get tired of the guiding lands.
You're excited to see how they do improve it somehow.
Yeah, and Wilds. When Wilds comes out, I'll play that. I mean, you can always put new monsters in. I don't even need improvement. I'm still not bored of World. I just want more content, It just keeps going. I really love it.
Love to see it. All right, I think that'll do it for us this week. Thank you all for listening. You can follow us at Podcast Game Talk on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Click the link in the description to join our Discord and talk to us there. Please like, rate, and review us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast services you use. Thank you, Connor and Mike.
Yeah, see you guys next week.
See you next week. Bye.